Joined today by Scott W. Bradley from Facet Digital to talk about their deployment on Couchbase Cloud. So Scott, can you tell me what really started the process for you to get here? What was the need to get you onto a cloud-based platform?
So we have several clients. We're a consulting and contracting firm, and we have clients in various industries. And in particular, what drove us here was a client that was struggling with some cloud provider vendor lock-in using a managed database, a document database, NoSQL service that wasn't getting them the performance they needed. So really what our consulting advice was to come in and say, let's figure out how to use something that's more open source friendly, runs on Linux, runs on Docker, runs with the tools that we want to use, and can be a little more cloud agnostic, but then can also give us the performance that we need, because the client's projects were just having a tough performance cost curve. And that we can talk about the details on that later, but really the performance cost curve is more than just the dollars you pay on your bill. It's the time you spend with your developers coding to it. It's the time you spend with your operations team, managing it, setting it up, deploying it, scaling it. And you know, the other aspect here was that we needed for this client, we needed to have a global deployment with data centers around the world with different pieces of data hosted in different regions of the world, and still be privacy law aware when we synchronize between them. So GDPR that everyone's familiar with. So I would say, you know, to distill that down, the core need for the project was to get out of vendor lock, improve our performance scalability profile, go global in a privacy law aware way, and reduce our ops overhead and development overhead in doing so.
Right. Well, and by summing that up, you really went into the sort of the challenges you were looking to solve. But are there any others you'd like to add in there, key challenges?
Yeah. So you know, if we want to talk about the key challenges, I would say I kind of break it into 5 categories. So the first key challenge would be performance, scalability, cost. You know, we often think that those are all interrelated some way. You can't talk about just scalability without talking about cost. Our prior managed database service was far too costly to scale for the performance we needed. It had pre-provisioned, you know, bandwidth or you know, throughput reservation units. Now, when we use Couchbase Cloud, we essentially pre-provision a certain amount of horsepower as well, but just out of the box, pound for pound, that pre-provisioned workload is cheaper when we're running Couchbase. And you know, even talking Couchbase versus Couchbase Cloud, where, you know, we can talk about the ops part of this side, but just, you know, query performance, document performance, write performance, dollar for dollar, we're getting better out of Couchbase. So that was kind of one of the first challenges. You know, the other challenge that we were coming in to address was just the functional complexity for developers. On our prior document database, we just had load issues, throttling issues that all had to be very hand-tuned by the developers to work with in order to get the type of reporting performance we needed and the type of real-time performance we needed. There was a lot of denormalization done in that database because it couldn't support, you know, it was a document database that didn't support things like Couchbase's Nickel, where we can do joins, where we can do more robust querying. So your application code is actually, you know, in some cases, when you have a relational workload, your application code has to bear that complexity. So with Couchbase, you know, one of the reasons we approached this was, hey, things like Nickel, things like full text search, those give us the opportunity to take a lot of dev work off our plate. Right. We also think that in our previous cloud provider for a managed database, the documentation was bad. You know, I don't know if that's their fault or Couchbase's fault for being better, but you know, just apples to apples, saying our developers can get the tuning they need much easier with the documentation that Couchbase provides than what we were working with before. And then lastly, the last developer win is local containers. So we have a Docker-based development environment, and it's literally 3 lines of YAML code to drop in a Couchbase local Docker container to your Docker Compose file. So as far as development setup is concerned, they didn't have to go install databases. They didn't have to figure out how to run all these things locally. In our prior service, because it was all 100% cloud managed, we did not have an equivalent that we could run locally. So we had to have everybody connected through a VPN. We had to deal with IP whitelists. Adding new developers was always a pain, provisioning them a database. So local development just got, was a complexity problem that we were aiming to solve because we had a lot of development going on at the same time. Or, a lot of development that had to be done in a short order. And so reducing development overhead, scaling up the team was important.
Right. And when you're billing a client for development time, I mean, reducing that's critical, right? Because it helps them
Absolutely
quicker, right? So then that dovetails into like, what are the positive outcomes that you've seen maybe for Facet Digital on your company side, right? When you guys are working on your work, right? You're working on your project for your customers, and what have your clients seen? What kind of comments have they made back about what they've noticed?
Yeah. So I as an anecdote, it's great because our first foray with Couchbase Cloud in front of the customer after our own beta work, we deployed one simple single node app, single node, Couchbase. Oh, actually, I think we did a real three node Couchbase cluster, but it's small. And we did a single node app server, and we deployed our entire app, and we migrated, which was actually pretty easy because all of our documents were already in JSON format. We migrated them over. We created Couchbase indexes, and then we stood up kind of a beta sandbox of our app with some fake data. And I got a call from the CEO saying, I'm amazed at how much faster this app is now. He didn't even know why it was faster at that point. It was literally the CEO telling me, whatever you guys did this weekend on this new app that you deployed, it's way faster. And this is the CEO who demos this and sales demos every day. He's not measuring performance, but he's getting a visual qualitative. This app, we have just like this app, just like a dashboard app that has a bunch of little boxes that all fill in with spinners. We were plagued with things that were blocking on each other, that were just, I don't know if it was the SDK or the database that we had before. It's like an accumulation of all those things. Where before, all these little spinners would just spin, and it would take 5 or 10 seconds to load the page. And now we're under a second, and everything just pops right in. And so that was the biggest wow factor that we got.
Yeah.
One other wow factor I would say we could talk about with the client was their customer, the client's customer, had some ETL ingestion and reporting frequency needs, and we were producing these once a day for them because things took so long. Right. And so I don't know what my client has settled on, but we took reports that took 45 minutes to generate. And just by removing the throttling code that we had in place for the other database, we're now producing those in less than 5 minutes. So that's like a 90% speed improvement, which now it's definitely a background job, right? So it's not your biggest user response time, but it is making my clients' customers happy because they can now make promises like, oh, hey, we'll give you hourly reports. Now that only takes 5 minutes, and the other part of that was on our prior database, we had to provision the peak performance or the peak reporting computation capacity needs in advance, right? On Couchbase, you technically do, but we're seeing a much better smoothed peak when we try to run these things. And I believe that is because of the in-memory data model, that we can hammer these reports and not even break a sweat.
That's awesome. And it just makes it's easier for your client to provide a promise to their customer, right? That I can get you that in.
That's right. Because it's a startup, our client, they're a funded startup, that they have to move quickly. The demands can change quickly. Right. And one area we've seen those demands change quickly is in what was heavily denormalized JSON document schema with no computation, just get documents, right? And that worked great on a simple platform, until you that can only do gets. Once you grow past that and you start having features thrown at you that are in a short timeline that you have to deliver, that are really relational features. The hybrid model of Couchbase was a big wow factor for us there. This having the tool Couchbase allow me to build good NoSQL, eventually consistent or fully consistent at my discretion, highly scalable, fast ingestion, fast reads, well indexed data. Great. The thing that looks even better for me is the fact that when they come to us with a last minute ad hoc new request, that we have tools like Nickel, FTS, and the analytics to be able to deliver on those way faster than we could before. So it costs my client less money to have us coding on Couchbase. And they're a startup. You've always got, everything's an emergency in a startup. We all know that, right? So being able to respond to those emergencies faster with Couchbase is also a big win for us, because it's now the preferred tool in our toolbox where we can say, yes, we can make these promises. Yes, we'll even if it's yes, we'll have a guy on call to help with ops, because we know ops is going to be just a little bit easier. We can have dev teams standing at the ready to deliver, ad hoc features. Or in this particular example, there are lots of customers of our client that will need quick turnaround on boutique features. And usually that's not necessarily, a bunch of UI development, but that is a custom report, or we need to slice this data differently, or we want to change the permission of how. So really that comes down to how quickly can we achieve the queries and get the answers out of our data that we need without having to do a bunch of software development, right? So I think that is a real benefit to us in terms of having a tool in our tool belt as consultants that we can rely on.
What would you say that kind of process would have been like before on your previous solution?
So there's a great anecdote here. So we had a kind of a time series data set with maybe 3 or 4 of them. And we needed to now create an all new RBAC control system for what various people looking at these timelines would be able to see. Mm-hmm. And what was difficult with the current system was, because we couldn't do joins across JSON documents, and we couldn't do deeper queries without building a full secondary index like Elasticsearch. What we would have to do is build in report generators or timeline generators that would try to pre-generate stuff before people needed it, or generate it on demand. It was very slow. We would have to write a bunch of code into the real-time path here. So instead of writing code to go query each different type of thing that I need to mix, mingle, and then effectively join and post-process, and that's a lot of code to write. Mm-hmm. Now we're simply doing these with FTS indexes and design document indexes on Couchbase. And so now the developer needing to write that new timeline feature or a new query clause that filters it based on some new permission model, that we have the power to join those things and build views around them and do things pretty fast.
That's amazing. What is kind of your one takeaway when you try to talk to clients and sell this new service, or at least the new capabilities that you guys have? What's kind of your two sentence wow factor? Wow, like amazing detail.
Right. Okay. So for me, the bottom line here as a pitch to my clients to use this technology is, it's a good tool set for our development teams that we're fluent with, and we're able to quickly pull off the thing. So you save money on dev costs. Mm-hmm. It's a good operational set, because with Couchbase Cloud, we spend 70% less time setting up the cloud infrastructure than we would if we had to build it by hand. So we save a lot of ops time. And then we are not an IT staffing shop. So we're not your 24/7 call center. And a lot of our clients, especially startups, don't have a robust ops team that's going to manage all this stuff. So we prefer to deliver managed services. So Couchbase Cloud being a managed service, and then we have high compliance clients that are in spaces like pharma and financial technology, where they need to have that data inside their AWS.
Right.
So not just hosting it out at a third party Couchbase service host. We're using it inside our own AWS area. We're using it inside our own AWS regions and VPCs to provide us the security we need. So security, scalability, ease of use, the total cost of ownership. And when I compare costs, I think not just the bill on your cloud invoice, but also all of the costs it takes to operate, manage, code to it, and the implicit costs of, losing a customer, incalculable cost of not being able to deliver for a customer. So the cross data center replication piece of Couchbase and Couchbase Cloud, where I can spin up the clusters, I can see them in my portal, I can connect them for synchronization. I don't even know how to calculate how much work we were going to put into that without using Couchbase XDR. And that's a huge thing, because that's make or break for my client's biggest customer right now. And their biggest initiative is rolling out globally with cross data center synchronization with GDPR rules applied. Right. So just, the bang for the buck overall is that we can get your job done quickly and reliably with Couchbase Cloud.
Right. And for you, right, repeatably, right? Because you're not necessarily going to do apples to apples, but you definitely know that you can trust the process for different clients in different scenarios, right?
That's right. So we have a client now that we're getting good success out of a Couchbase Cloud deployment in the pharma industry and doing these global deployments. And we have another client that we're about to start up that's in a live venue entertainment space that will have similar problems when it comes to running in Europe for the GDPR and central home base reporting, but they will have some IoT data coming in. So they will be high volume. And what we can see is that the problems we're solving from a code perspective, the types of techniques we use on top of Couchbase are going to be applicable across multiple customers, even in vastly different domains. So you could say the same thing about many databases. If you're good at Postgres, you're good at Postgres. But for us as a small consulting firm, having a cognitive load reduction by narrowing the field. Yes, we've done RDS and Aurora and Mongo and Couchbase and Riak and Redis and all these things, and we have expertise in all of these. But when it's shaking out, Couchbase gives us kind of the best, the best cut through all of those things. We get the in-memory performance of a Redis, we get the queryability of a Postgres, we get the scalability of a Dynamo. We get and the operations overhead of using a managed service. So I'm certain that I could argue that there's always, I'm not going to say Couchbase wins everything every time, right? There's always other databases that have their strengths and weaknesses. But as far as being an organization that has a one-stop shop tool that lets us come in here and get the job done, we do it. It lets us win the bids. It lets us deliver confidently. And it lets us know that we have something we can hand off because we're not your scale team, right? So we're not the company that's going to grow your staff, right? So once your staff grows beyond us, we got to be able to hand it off in a way that everything makes sense and it's managed. So that the handoff's easy.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Scott. Good luck.